The ship had been dead for 3,000 years. It floated in the empty space between stars, where no light reached and no one traveled. The hull was black and covered in the marks of weapons that no longer existed. The name on its side had faded long ago, but if someone looked closely, they could still read the old Earth letters. Was the first to see it. She was a physician on the research vessel Pale Light. Her people were tall and thin, with skin that glowed soft blue in the dark. They had traveled to this dead region of space to study old radiation patterns. No one expected to find anything. But there it was, a ship from the human war. Had read about humans in school. Everyone had. They were the species that saved the galaxy from the swarm 3,000 years ago. They fought with a madness that terrified both enemy and ally. They could survive wounds that would kill any other species. They healed fast. They never stopped fighting until they were dead. And then they all died, every single one. The swarm was destroyed, but so were the humans. The galaxy mourned them for a generation, then forgot them. Now they were just stories, legends told to children. Most people didn't even believe they were real. Believed. She had seen the old recordings. She had watched humans charge into battles they could not win, screaming and bleeding and never stopping. It gave her nightmares. The captain of the Pale Light wanted to leave the dead ship alone. It was dangerous, he said. There could be old weapons inside, traps, diseases. But convinced him, this was history, this was important. She led the boarding party herself. The inside of the was dark and frozen. Ice covered every surface. The air was so cold that it hurt to breathe even through their suits. They found bodies in the corridors, human bodies preserved by the cold, soldiers in armor still holding their weapons, scientists at their stations, a woman in a pilot's chair, her hands frozen on controls that would never move again. Felt tears in her eyes. These people had died fighting. They had given everything. Then she found the room. It was deep in the ship, behind 3 locked doors that took an hour to open. Inside was a single machine, still running after all this time. It hummed with old power, drawing energy from somewhere could not understand. It was a pod, and there was someone inside. His hands shook as she wiped the ice from the small window. She saw a face, a human face, a man young with black hair and closed eyes. His skin was pale but not dead. There was color in his lips. He was alive. Called the captain, she called the scientists. They all came running. No one could believe it. A living human, the last human, sleeping for 3,000 years while the galaxy moved on without him. They argued for hours about what to do. Some wanted to leave him frozen. Some wanted to take him back to there. Some were afraid. What if he was dangerous? What if he attacked them? In the end, made the decision. She opened the pod. The man woke up fast, too fast. One moment he was still. The next, his eyes were open and his hand was around his throat. He moved like nothing she had ever seen. 3 of her crew were on the ground before anyone could react. His eyes were wild, animal, full of a fear that looked like rage. He shouted something in a language no one had spoken for 30 centuries. Could not breathe. His grip was like metal. She looked into his eyes and saw a man who had been fighting his whole life. A man who had fallen asleep in war and woken up expecting more war. She did the only thing she could think of. She stopped struggling. She let her body go soft. She looked at him with all the calm she could find and said slowly, "You are safe." He did not understand her words, but he understood her tone. His grip loosened, his breathing slowed. The wildness in his eyes faded into something else. Confusion, then pain. He let her go and stepped back. He looked around the room at the alien faces staring at him. He looked at the frozen walls of his dead ship. He looked at his own hands, still strong, still young, while everything he knew had turned to dust. Spoke again, using the translation device on her wrist. "My name is. You have been asleep for a very long time." The man's voice was rough when he answered. How long? 3,000 years. He was silent for a long moment, watched emotions cross his face like storms, shock, denial, then a grief so deep it made her heart ache. My brother, he said, my wife Bora, my crew. Shook her head slowly. I am sorry, you are the last. The man did not cry. He did not scream. He simply stood there, very still, like something inside him had broken so completely that there was nothing left to break. Finally he spoke. His voice was quiet but steady. My name is, I was a soldier. He looked at with eyes that had seen too much death. What happened to the swarm? We won, said. Your people won, the swarm was destroyed. Nodded slowly. Then his legs gave out and he fell to his knees. He did not fall from weakness. Could see that. He fell because the war he had fought for years was over, and everyone he loved was gone, and the only thing that had kept him standing was a fight that no longer existed. Knelt beside him, she put a hand on his shoulder. She did not know what to say. What could anyone say to the last of his kind? So she said nothing. She just stayed with him in the cold and the dark, while the last human grieved for a world that had forgotten his name. The Galactic Coalition had changed in 3,000 years. Saw it the moment he stepped onto Sovereignty Station. The place was beautiful. Towers of crystal and light reached toward an artificial sky. Species of every shape and color walked through streets made of polished stone. Music played from somewhere. Children laughed. There was no fear here, no soldiers on corners, no ships in the sky ready for battle. Peace, real peace, the kind had only dreamed about during the war. But something was wrong. He could feel it in the way people looked at him, in the way they whispered and pointed, in the way guards followed him at a distance, hands near their weapons. They did not see a hero. They saw a monster from old stories. Walked beside him, explaining things as they moved through the station. She told him about the coalition, about how the species that once fought together against the swarm now argued about trade and territory, about how the military had shrunk to almost nothing, about how most people believed the war was exaggerated, that humans were myths made bigger by time. Listened, he did not speak. The Coalition Council met in a great hall at the heart of the station. Leaders from 100 species sat in circles of floating chairs, their voices echoing in the vast space. Stood alone in the center, surrounded by creatures that had forgotten what he was. High Arbiter spoke first. He was a reptile species with green scales and cold eyes. His voice was full of boredom. So this is the famous human, said, smaller than the stories, less impressive. Some in the council laughed, said nothing. We have reviewed your ship's records, continued. You were a soldier, a commander, but your war is over. Your people are dead. What do you want from us? Looked at the Arbiter. His voice was calm. I want to know what happened after we fell. Waved a hand. The swarm was destroyed. Your kind sacrificed themselves. Very noble, very sad. The galaxy built memorials. Then we moved on. That is what living things do. Memorials, repeated. The word tasted bitter. Yes, there is one on Earth, actually. Though no one visits anymore. The planet is empty. A museum, really, for historians and tourists. Felt something cold move through his chest. Earth, his home, a museum. A young stood up in the back of the council. His name was a historian who had spent his life studying the human war. His voice shook when he spoke. High Arbiter, with respect, this is wrong. This man is not a relic. He is a survivor. His people saved every species in this room. We owe them everything. Made a sound of annoyance. We owe them gratitude, yes, we gave them gratitude, statues, holidays, songs, what more do they want? They want to be remembered correctly, said. Not as myths, not as exaggerations, as what they really were. And what were they? Asked, his voice mocking. Answered, we were afraid. The hall went quiet, everyone looked at him. We were afraid, said again. Every battle, every day, The swarm was endless. They did not stop. They did not negotiate. They only killed and consumed. We watched entire planets die. We buried our friends. We woke up screaming from nightmares that never went away. He stepped forward. His voice did not rise, but something in it made even lean back. But we fought anyway, not because we were strong, not because we could heal fast or survive things that killed others. We fought because we knew what would happen if we stopped. We fought for the species who could not fight. We fought for children we would never meet. We fought until there was no one left to fight. Looked around the hall at the comfortable faces, the soft hands, the eyes that had never seen real war. You call us myths. You say we were exaggerated, but you are only alive because we died. Every one of you, your parents, your grandparents, 100 generations. All of them exist because humans stood between them and the swarm. The silence was heavy now. No one laughed. Asked his question, the one that had been burning in his mind since he woke up. The swarm, did we kill all of them? No one answered, looked away. Others shifted in their seats. Finally spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. We do not know. The swarm disappeared after the final battle. We assumed they were destroyed, but there have been rumors, strange signals from deep space, ships that vanished near the old border. And no one investigated, asked. There was no proof, said quickly. Just stories, paranoid speculation. The war has been over for 3,000 years. The swarm is gone. Looked at the High Arbiter for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Where are you going? Demanded. Did not look back, to find out if you are right. Caught up with him in the corridor. What will you do? Stopped, he looked at his hands. Hands that had killed thousands. Hands that had held his dying wife as she smiled and told him to keep fighting. I lost everything so this galaxy could have peace, he said. If the swarm is still out there, if they are coming back, then it was all for nothing. My wife, my brother, my people, all of it wasted. He looked at, she saw something terrible in his eyes. Not anger, not hate, something worse. Purpose. I will not let that happen, said. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, I will not let them have died for nothing. He walked away into the light of the station, alone, the last of a species that the galaxy had forgotten. But the galaxy was about to remember. The attack came without warning. 4 was a small world on the edge of coalition space. Farmers lived there, families, children who had never seen a weapon. They grew food for the inner worlds and lived quiet lives under a purple sky. Then the sky turned black. Ships came out of nowhere, thousands of them, dark shapes that blocked out the sun. They were organic, grown rather than built, with shells like insects and weapons that screamed when they fired. The swarm had returned. Was on Sovereignty Station when the news came. He stood in a small room they had given him, watching the screens as reports flooded in. 4 was burning. The coalition fleet had arrived to help, but they were dying. Modern ships, built for patrol and ceremony, crumbled against enemies that had been fighting wars since before most species learned to speak. He watched soldiers panic on the broadcasts. He watched commanders give orders that made no sense. He watched beautiful ships explode in silence while crews screamed their last breaths. 3,000 years of peace had made the galaxy soft. Found a shuttle bay. He took a small ship without asking. No one tried to stop him. The guards who saw him looked into his eyes and stepped aside. He flew to 4 alone. The planet was chaos when he arrived. Buildings burned. Bodies lay in the streets. The swarm had landed ground forces, creatures that walked on too many legs and killed with claws and teeth and acid that melted flesh. The coalition soldiers were running, fighting in small groups, dying. Landed near a hospital. It was the only building still standing in this part of the city. Wounded filled every room. Doctors worked with bloody hands, knowing the swarm was coming, knowing they would all die soon. A woman stood at the entrance. Her name was. She was young, with dark hair and tired eyes. She held a broken rifle in her hands. Behind her, children cried and wounded soldiers moaned. She was the only thing between them and the swarm. She was not a soldier. She ran a refugee camp before the attack. She had never killed anyone in her life. But when the soldiers ran, she picked up a dead man's weapon and stood her ground. The swarm came down the street. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They moved like a wave, climbing over each other, screaming in a language of clicks and hisses. Raised her broken rifle. Her hands shook. She knew she would die. She just wanted to buy the people behind her a few more seconds. Then stepped past her. He walked into the street like a man walking home. He carried weapons he had taken from fallen soldiers, old coalition rifles, a blade he had found on the shuttle, nothing special, nothing that should have mattered against so many. The swarm saw him and paused. Something in their simple minds recognized danger. This small creature walked toward them without fear, without hesitation, like he had done this before. Like he had done this 1,000 times. Raised a rifle and fired. The first wave of swarm fell. The second wave charged, moved through them like water, shooting and cutting and breaking necks with his bare hands. They tore at him with claws. They bit through his armor. They burned his skin with acid. He did not stop. Watched from the hospital entrance. She had seen soldiers fight. She had seen brave people do brave things, but she had never seen anything like this. Was not fighting, he was hunting. Every movement was perfect, every shot killed. When his weapons ran empty, he used his fists. When his fists broke, he used his elbows, his knees, his teeth. Blood covered him, his own blood, swarm blood. It did not matter. He held that corridor for 6 hours. The swarm sent more soldiers, killed them. They sent bigger creatures, monsters with armor like stone and jaws that could bite through metal, found weak points, made them fall. They sent flyers that attacked from above, shot them out of the sky. At some point, he stopped being a man. He became something else. A force. A storm. The kind of thing that the old records talked about. The kind of thing that made the swarm run 3,000 years ago. When coalition reinforcements finally broke through, they found the street filled with bodies. Swarm corpses piled so high they blocked the view. And in the middle of it all, covered in wounds that would have killed any other species 10 times over, stood. He was still standing. A soldier approached him carefully. "Sir, are you alive?" Turned, his eyes were empty. Not angry, not proud, just tired, so deeply tired. "The hospital," he said. His voice was rough, broken. "Are they safe?" "Yes, sir. Everyone inside survived." Nodded, then his legs finally gave out. He fell into the pile of his enemies and did not move. Ran to him. She pushed through soldiers and bodies until she reached his side. She pressed her hands against wounds that should have been fatal. She shouted for medics. "Who is he?" someone asked. Looked at the unconscious man, at the scars old and new, at the hands that had killed so many. "He is human," she said. The word spread like fire. Soldiers whispered it to each other. Officers reported it to their commanders. Within hours, the entire galaxy knew. A human was alive. And he had just reminded the swarm what fear felt like. In the darkness between stars, the Pale Queen received the news. She was ancient, the oldest of the swarm, the only one who remembered the human war. She had hidden for 3,000 years, rebuilding her forces, waiting for the right moment. She had hoped the humans were all dead. She was wrong. The Queen gave a single command to her billions of soldiers, a command that echoed through the swarm's hive mind like a scream. Kill the human, whatever it costs, whatever you lose. Kill him before he reminds the galaxy what they can become. But it was already too late. The galaxy was remembering. Every species in the galaxy watched the footage. It spread across networks in hours. security cameras from 4, helmet recordings from soldiers, footage of a single human standing against the swarm, taking wounds that should have killed him 100 times and never falling. On 100 worlds, people who had laughed at human stories went quiet. Children who had thought humans were fairy tales watched a man tear through monsters with his bare hands. Old veterans who remembered their grandparents' stories finally understood that those stories were not exaggerated. They were held back. The real humans were worse. Woke up in a medical bay on Sovereignty Station. His body was wrapped in bandages that were already soaked through with blood. Machines beeped around him. Doctors of 6 different species argued about his biology. He should have been dead, he knew that. A human body could survive a lot, but not what he had survived on 4. Yet here he was, breathing, healing, his wounds closing faster than the doctors could explain. It was not a blessing, it was a curse. The galaxy needed him alive, so his body refused to let him die. Sat beside his bed. She had not left since they brought him in. "You are famous now," she said quietly. "Everyone knows your name. Everyone wants to meet the human who stopped the swarm." Stared at the ceiling. "I did not stop them, I delayed them. There is a difference. You saved 400 people, the hospital, the children. And how many died while I was sleeping for 3,000 years? How many planets? How many species?" Did not answer. There was no good answer. Days passed, healed, visitors came, generals wanted his advice, politicians wanted his support, reporters wanted his story. He spoke to none of them. He sat in his room and watched the news. The swarm was spreading. After 4, they attacked 3 more worlds. The coalition fought back, but they were losing. Ships that had never seen real combat crumbled against an enemy that had been born for war. Came to see him. The young historian brought old books, records from the human war. He thought they might help. Read them in silence. He saw names he recognized, friends who died, commanders he served under, his brother's research notes, his wife's flight records. "Your wife was a pilot," said carefully. "The records say she destroyed a swarm capital ship alone, flew into its core and detonated her weapons." "She did not have weapons left," said. His voice was flat. "She flew her ship into the engine at full speed. She was smiling when she did it. I watched it happen." Did not know what to say. "She told me to keep fighting," continued. "Those were her last words, keep fighting, so I did. I fought until there was nothing left to fight. And then I closed my eyes and 3,000 years passed, and now everyone I loved is dust, and the enemy we died to kill is still alive." He looked at. The young saw something broken in those human eyes. "Do you know what that feels like? To give everything and have it mean nothing?" "It meant something," said. "You gave us 3,000 years of peace. Generations were born and lived and died without knowing war. That is not nothing. And now the war is back, and this time there are no humans to fight it. There is you." Laughed. It was not a happy sound. "One human against billions. I held a corridor for 6 hours. The swarm has taken 4 planets in a week. What can one human do?" Appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale. "They are coming," she said. "The swarm. A fleet has been detected heading for Sovereignty Station. They will be here in 3 days." Stood slowly. His wounds screamed, but he ignored them. "How many ships?" "Millions. The largest fleet in recorded history. They are sending everything." "Why? The coalition capital is important, but not that important. They could bypass it, strike the inner worlds. Why here?" Swallowed. The Pale Queen sent a message. It was broadcast across all channels. She played the recording. The Queen's voice was ancient, cold, like ice cracking. 3,000 years ago, a species of small, weak creatures stood against us. They burned themselves to nothing to stop our advance. We have never forgotten. We have waited. We have rebuilt. And now we return to finish what we began. But first we must kill the ghost that haunts us. The last human dies on Sovereignty Station. Then the galaxy follows. Listen to the message. He played it again and again. She is afraid, he said finally. Afraid, she is sending millions of ships. Because she is afraid, she remembers what humans did. She knows that if even one survives, everything she has built could fall apart. That is why she is coming with everything. Not because she is strong, because she knows how this story ends if she gives the galaxy time to remember what humans taught them. He walked to the window. Outside, ships gathered. The coalition was preparing to fight, to die. What will you do? Asked. Pressed his hand against the glass. Beyond the station, stars burned in the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, empty now, a museum. My wife gave everything to stop the swarm. My brother, my friends, every human who ever lived in my time, they all believed it was worth it. They believed that if they fell, the galaxy would rise. He turned back to face, and in his eyes something had changed. The broken man was still there, but something else had joined him, something harder, something that had teeth. I am going to make them right, he said. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, I am going to show the galaxy what humanity died for. Outside, the swarm fleet drew closer. Millions of ships, carrying billions of soldiers, coming to kill one man. But was not afraid. He had been afraid once, on his first mission, on his wedding day, when he watched his wife fly into fire, when he closed his eyes in that pod, not knowing if he would ever wake up. He had used up all his fear a long time ago. Now there was only the fight. And humans never stopped fighting. The sky above Sovereignty Station turned black with ships. Millions of them, so many that they blocked the light from the nearest star. The swarm had come with everything, every soldier, every weapon, every monster bred in the darkness between galaxies for 3,000 years. The coalition fleet rose to meet them. Brave crews in ships that were not built for this. Soldiers who had never seen real war fighting an enemy born for nothing else. They died by the thousands. Watched from the station, he stood in a hangar bay, alone, looking at a single fighter ship. It was old, a museum piece kept as a memorial. The same model his wife Bora had flown 30 centuries ago. Found him there. The council is evacuating, she said. There are escape ships. You could leave, hide somewhere live. Did not look at her. His hand rested on the fighter's hull. My wife flew one of these, he said. She was better than me, faster, smarter. She could make this ship dance. He paused. She told me once that dying was not the scary part. The scary part was dying for nothing, dying and having it not matter. You do not have to do this. Yes, I do. He finally turned to face her. The galaxy forgot what we were. They forgot that we were afraid too. They forgot that courage is not about having no fear. It is about being terrified and fighting anyway. He climbed into the fighter. The old systems hummed to life, recognizing human hands on the controls after so many years. Said, her voice cracked, I will remember you, I promise, we all will. He smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. Do not remember me. Remember what I fought for. Remember that even the smallest species, the weakest species, the species that the galaxy laughed at and forgot, can change everything. He closed the cockpit. The fighter lifted off and flew into the battle. Outside, the coalition was losing. Ships fell like rain. The swarm pressed forward, unstoppable, endless. The Pale Queen's flagship hung at the center of the enemy fleet, a massive organic nightmare directing the slaughter. Opened a channel. Every ship in the battle heard his voice. Every screen on every world showed his face. This is last soldier of Earth, last human in the galaxy. The fighting paused. Even the swarm hesitated. They knew that voice. Their queen knew that voice. 3,000 years ago you killed my people. You burned our worlds. You took everything from us, and we still beat you. Not because we were stronger, not because we were smarter, because we refused to stop, because we understood something you never will. His fighters shot forward into the heart of the swarm fleet. Enemy ships turned to follow. Weapons fired. He dodged them all, moving like his wife once moved, like water through stone. Life is not about surviving. It is about what you survive for. My wife died so children she never met could grow up safe. My brother died so species he would never know could study the stars. My people died so that you, all of you, could have 3,000 years of peace. The Pale Queen screamed commands. Kill him, destroy him, do not let him reach the flagship. But was already there. He flew through the gaps in the swarm formation. He flew through fire and death and impossible odds. Coalition soldiers watched. Swarm soldiers watched. The whole galaxy watched. One small ship, one human, flying toward the heart of darkness. I am not doing this for revenge, said. His voice was calm now, almost peaceful. I am not doing this because I want to die. I am doing this because this is what humans do. We find something worth dying for, and then we do not stop until it is done. His ship was damaged now, engines failing, weapons empty. He had nothing left but speed and will. The Pale Queen's flagship loomed ahead, massive, ancient, the brain of the swarm. Push the engines to full power. My name is, I was a soldier, I was a husband, I was a brother, I was human. The fighter hit the flagship's core at full speed. The explosion was blinding. The Queen's scream echoed through the swarm's hive mind as her flagship died around her. Without her commands, the swarm fell into chaos. Ships crashed into each other. Soldiers stopped fighting. The perfect coordination that made them unstoppable shattered in an instant. The coalition saw their chance. They attacked with everything they had left. Hours of battle became minutes. The swarm that had threatened to consume the galaxy broke apart and fled. They had won. Sovereignty Station survived. The coalition survived. The galaxy survived. Because one human refused to stop fighting. In the days that followed, returned to the old ship. She searched through its frozen rooms, its dead corridors, looking for something. She did not know what. Found it, a hidden database in the ship's core, protected by codes that had entered before his final flight. Inside were coordinates, dozens of them, locations scattered across the galaxy. And at each location, a signal, weak but steady, the same signal that Pod had sent before they found him. More pods, more humans hidden in the darkness, sleeping, waiting. Had known. Somehow, he had known he was not the last. He had found these signals in the old ship's records. He had kept them secret until he was sure the galaxy was ready. Until he was sure his sacrifice would mean something. Sent ships to the first coordinates. They found a pod floating in dead space. Inside was a woman with black hair and familiar features. Her records identified her as military, a medic. She had been asleep even longer than. Her name was. She was not the last, none of them were. In the months that followed, more pods were found. 12 in total. 12 humans who had survived in the cold and the dark while the galaxy moved on. They were not an army, they were barely a family, but they were enough. Enough to remember, enough to teach, enough to show the galaxy what humanity had been. And what it could become again. On the anniversary of the battle, a memorial was built on Sovereignty Station. Not a statue, not a plaque, a garden, living things growing in soil brought from Earth, the first Earth life to exist anywhere in 3,000 years. The plaque at its entrance was simple. For humanity, for everyone who ever chose to fight for something bigger than themselves. Visited the garden every day. She would sit among the strange earth plants and think about the man who had changed everything. She never forgot him. None of them did. And somewhere, on a dozen worlds across the galaxy, human children played under alien stars. The species that had died to save the universe was alive again. Small, weak, afraid. And unstoppable.